All right, welcome back and thank you. I stepped into each room and I heard some great conversations happening. So I'm looking forward to what you have to report back. And as people are reporting back, people are sharing ideas. Sometimes this is really not rocket science. It's kind of as simple as the quote that Jim put in the chat earlier and that I quoted. You know, if it's not written down, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And some of the things that are just kind of aha moments that other groups may share. So be prepared to jot some of those things down as groups come back to us and share. And do we have one that would like to start us off?
Well, this is Denise Seymour Egbert. I never mind going first. So I work for
I'm happy for that.
Corrections.
Okay.
Not on you. Okay. I work for Tennessee Department of Corrections and I'm the training director at our academy. So we have a centralized academy and we have plenty of regional training now. Of course, like everybody, we have that. So we talked about that in our group as far as making sure now we might be training in different areas. How do we make sure that we're documenting it correctly? We're all using electronic record keeping in some way, shape, or form that possibly might not have been done until now. And some of that was spurred by the fact that all of us are doing some sort of distance learning, which can be a challenge, not for the learning, but for the documenting. So it's good that we all picked up on that. We all said our agencies regularly and like on a schedule, review and revise the curriculum. So it's all used annually, I think we all said. And then of course, if something changes like a policy or a statute or even a best practice in the industry, we all have that reviewed by our instructors and our subject matter experts. So those are two big things that I would guess we do. We review regularly and we document record keeping, electronic record keeping.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Denise.
Yes.
And which group would like to go next? After a great start.
We can jump on there. So our group had staff from Ohio and West Virginia. And so the general theme that we came up with is that our materials are being reviewed by either a legal attorney that's retained by the state or administration that has some background making sure that everything's legal and that we're following those requirements, as well as being ACA certified and using those standards, and then also meeting the needs of the agency. So for West Virginia, they're incorporating a lot of different aspects. They went under one umbrella, so they're dealing with juveniles through adults. So they had to look at that curriculum and what requirements are going to be different based on the population that they're serving. And then for Ohio, and I know for Wyoming as well, we do yearly reviews and tailor our training to meet the needs of our staff. And it sounds like West Virginia was very much on that same page. And so flowing with what is current and what's needed based on new cases that are being heard from state Supreme Courts and on up.
Mm-hmm. All right. And just out of curiosity, who's monitoring what's happening at the court level, the litigation level within your Commonwealth or state and within the nation? Is there somebody designated to do that?
I can speak personally for Wyoming. We have our Attorney General's office. So we have an attorney within that monitors those cases for us, that gives us legal advice, and then tells us if we're doing something incorrectly or need to change a practice.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that example. Okay, because sometimes it's about checking all the boxes and sometimes it's about making sure that you have those pieces in place and that they're used in all curriculums. I know COVID for many people kind of threw us into the, well, how are we going to do training? What are we going to do? And I heard stories of people doing defensive tactics on people's porches and using significant others as their role play and the person that they could actually touch and demonstrate. And, you know, in the short term, okay, it got the message across, but is that how we want to document and do best training and best practices? And so looking at, and also some of the things that we put online, it was Zoom, and how things grow out of that, and we learn and how we add to that. Excellent. So let's talk about the next group. Who's going to share?
I'll go ahead. I was in group number 5. We talked about one of the key things is having third parties get involved. Like somebody mentioned already, the ACA. We talked about post certification and having post, check over the work. And one of the examples we talked about was just, first aid and CPR, having Red Cross or another agency similar to that, looking at those documents and making sure the material is correct.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Daryl.
I
Other
can go
thoughts?
next, Lana.
Yes, Ken.
Yeah, I was in group 4 and we had George from California and Susie from probation department here in Nebraska. And then I'm from the Department of Corrections here in Nebraska Training Academy. And kind of similar things to what we've heard already. George was talking about the review that's done over his curriculum in California by a post-like organization that would review all the curriculum and approve. Susie was talking about the different steps that any type of curriculum goes through in the probation department. And here in our department, kind of the same thing. It starts with the curriculum developer, but then there's a couple more steps if an SME is involved. It actually, in our department, we have to take it through the deputy director of that SME for them to double check it before it comes to us. And then we have here kind of a luxury of easy accessibility to our legal department. We're a smaller agency and all I need to do is send an email to our lead attorney with any questions and I get an answer right away. So that's really an advantage that we have here that we really enjoy. So yeah, it's similar to some things that have already been mentioned. I don't see anything in my notes that is necessarily unique, but everybody has steps that they go through. It just does not go from the curriculum developer straight to the classroom.
So what I'm noticing is we're talking a lot about that record keeping. We're talking a lot about curriculum development. We're talking about the trainers. We've mentioned the learner themselves, but where does administration get involved? Okay, so give me some more ideas and you can just shout those out where administrators play a key role and, do they need to know what's going on? I recall an agency that when I first became aware of their agency, they had a multi-tiered system that, a subject matter expert wrote it, somebody in curriculum helped to add those strategies, followed by the review of the leadership of the training academy, but then moving it to an outside subject matter expert for that last look of, the person in the department that was in charge of defensive tactics. And is there anything in this related kind of lesson plan that contradicts what we're saying in here? And then we had, the next level was the level where someone from the executive staff signed it, a secretary, a deputy secretary, and so on. And that system was way down in the, Ken, unfortunately, we didn't have that quick response from legal. We didn't have that quick response from the administration and especially the subject matter experts, because they're like, hey, we're not curriculum developers. We don't get this. Is that implied or should we put it in the lesson plan? So helping to make sure that the subject matter experts that you have also have a clear line of what they need to use to contribute. And what are you asking administration to do? Trust the process, or are you asking them to actually look at the curriculum? Or, or do you accompany it with some sort of a memo that educates administration and subject matter experts along the way so that they knew what the changes were, those kind of things. That's part of that documentation that goes a little bit further than what we've been saying so far, but also adds to that legally defensible. And all of that should be backed up. And I'm going to bring back up my slideshow here. And I'm hoping that you took the opportunity to jot some things down as you move forward. But I'm going to ask you to think about this piece here and what resources are available to you in your organization as you are looking at how to make these improvements. And those improvements include not only your agency policies and procedures, but also to have some guidelines in place for those subject matter experts that are signing off. And for those individuals, what is the qualification for that? 5 years of experience in your organization or 5 years in a similar organization, 3 years, 2 years, whatever, becomes a standard within your agency. And I'm not here to say 5 is better than 3, and because someone may bring in that piece, but that provides that subject matter expertise. The National Institute of Corrections and the Information Center have resources available to you. And each of these areas are addressed through curriculum, the learning professional curriculum that has been rolled out, looking at the development of not only the leadership, but also those curriculum writers. And there is a section on liability in each of the training pieces. Looking at training in the public sector areas. I'm sorry, I jumped over nationally recognized standards. What does the vendor say needs to be done? Because that's part of your liability piece. And sometimes I had an experience with those taser-like products. It wasn't a taser product, but it was a taser-like product. And the vendor required 3 hours of annual training each year for every user, retraining each year. And as we get into that crunch time of what's going to fit in our 24 hours, oh, name that tune, we can do it in 2 hours. And so how people try to change things and adapt that, but knowing that when it comes down to that legal case, the vendor said 3 hours, you chose 2. Can someone back up that decision? Nationally recognized organizations like AJA, the American Probation and Parole, ACA, all of those, and the PREA standards and pieces like that that come into play. And what are our federal and state guidelines? Training in the public sector, looking at what other organizations are doing. We're not that far off from what what they're doing. And everybody's trying to do it just a little bit less expensive, a little bit easier. And then this organization is a great resource for you. Iactp, looking at standards, looking at the information they have, workshops like this that provide people with ideas and the opportunity to network and to be part of this conversation. So just for a moment, I'd like to go to the chat and give you a few moments to what are some other resources that you would say are out there? Anything that comes to mind, or people that you make connections with? Corrections1.com. Oh, excellent, Daryl. Excellent resource there. Not only for some for some background stories, but just what's going on in the field. That is a great resource. Other ideas? Professional training. Yes. ATD. Yes. NIC. Yes. And being on the lookout for those things. Sometimes we wait for them to come to us, but how often do you think about your own professional development? And reading, and it's all available online now. But one of those tools of just looking at those magazines and having it in your vocabulary, and making sure that you're speaking the terms that other agencies and other developments are using. So as we think about legally defensible training and we come together here, and I'm going to take us back to the PowerPoint just so I don't get too far off base here. But I want you to think about one first step to implement something that you've learned during this training. And one thing that, like, gosh, that was an aha moment, something that I should be paying attention to. Because legally defensible training, if we go back to that original definition, talked about being proactive. And one of the outcomes of this training that I hope that you have is the fact that many of you are already doing things that make it legally defensible. It's about tightening up some of those things. It's about telling the trainers why it's important for each person to individually sign in on the sign-in sheet and not have someone sign everybody's name to it, okay? That was one of those things that drove me crazy at the detention center. First person in would sign up everybody that was coming and then hand me the paper back and say, oh, well, here we go. Let's go with the training. Let's get going. And I said, you know, I need your individual handwritten signatures on there. As you're doing electronic stuff, it's about it coming in through that credible source. So be comforted in the fact that you know that you're doing great things in training, and be comforted in the things that you know that are easily accessible, and the things that you can do to make your programs better. So I'd like to take just a moment to hear some of the things that people are starting points that you will implement in leaving this training. Anybody willing to share? Denise, I see your lips moving, but I think you're on mute. So since you're willing to share, yes.
I always like to share this with my peers and my subordinates, my superiors, because they don't all get to be on trainings like I do, and they have good ideas too, and just prompt them to start thinking more. It's not just me. I need them too.
Mm-hmm. That's part of the leading geese. That's part of the geese community. It takes all of those folks together working towards the same goal. And as you see the geese flying, I think they'll be heading to the south now as the weather changes. But, you know, it's a different person taking the lead and using their talents to move the mission forward. And so, and communicating what that mission is and what your organization is doing to help that. It also helps those people that have to stand up for you, whether in budget meetings, whether in legal cases. If they know that there's mechanisms in place to make sure your training is solid. Excuse me, we're not just delivering training from 2016, which, believe it or not, is 5 years ago. Even though most of us have lost the last 12 to 13 months, it doesn't matter. It's still a new year. And so some of those things that have come into play are very important. I want to share with you again the fact that there's a lot of great stuff in this chat. And if you're able to save the chat by going down there to the bottom to the 2 and going across to where the dots are, hit the save chat. And then later that chat information can be found in your documents on your PC under My Documents, and there'll be a Zoom folder there, and it'll have today's title and dates on it. So in closing, I just will take you back here for just a moment. It truly has been my pleasure to be with you and to know some of those folks that I haven't seen for many years or talked to on phone still exist. And good luck in your legally defensible training. I know that there are a few words from our sponsors coming up here. So thank you for this opportunity, and I will turn it back to, I believe, Beth.
Beth, yep. Well, thank you, Lana. On behalf of Iactp, I just want to say we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come and share your knowledge and expertise with all of our participants. Lana, I'm not sure if you put your contact info in the chat or if they have that, but you may want to do that if you haven't done so. And I would also like to take this opportunity just to give you a little bit of information about Iactp. We are going to be hosting our conference virtually again this year. Michael will be putting a link to the conference registration in the chat box. It's October the 13th, and we'll be running simultaneous workshops. We'll have a keynote speaker, and then we'll have the opportunity to visit the vendor booth during the lunch period. So we are going to do our best to simulate as if we were all in person. And we're extremely hopeful that next year we will be able to host the conference in the great state of Maine. That is our plan. We just knew that at this point, for 2021, a lot of agencies didn't know or weren't able to commit to be able to send folks potentially out of state. So we're just going to go ahead and do it virtually. October 13th, Michael should put the link in the chat, and I apologize, I don't have the chat up right now. The other thing that I asked Michael to put in the chat was the call for presentations. So if you are interested in presenting at our conference, please shoot us a project proposal via the link that Michael has put into the chat. If you have any questions about the organization, you can visit our website at www.iactp.org. For those of you that are already members, we will be allowing you to attend the conference for $50. And the folks who are not members but wish to become members, and you have to be a member to attend the conference fee will be $100, and $50 of that will go towards your annual membership fee. We have a lot of really great resources online for you to take a look at. It's just a great networking opportunity. If you've not attended one of our conferences, it's a fantastic opportunity, and I'm extremely disappointed that we will not be able to be in person again this year, but we're going to live it up in Maine, I think, next year. We've already started talking about some of the fun things that we're going to do. So at this point in time, we will close out. And Lana, again, thank you very much for presenting. And Michael, thank you for producing. If you have any questions or comments, you can certainly shoot Michael an email or myself an email. Michael, if you can put those two email addresses in, I would appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks.